Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Geek-Minded Fools. My name's Graham.
And I'm Scott.
As usual, we'll kick off with a visit to the monkey farm.
Hey, partners, it's time to see what Scott's doing down on his monkey farm.
Welcome once again, sir, to the monkey farm. You're always welcome.
I feel welcome.
You're always welcome. Apart from when you hijack things, then you're not so welcome. Although last time your hijacking was welcome, so, you know, it's a mixed bag.
Make your mind
It's a mixed bag of emotions that I've got, Graham. It's a mixed bag of emotions. I've got some news for you this week regarding the lovely Hideo Kojima, who might not be a name that you recognise, but
not at all.
You will in a minute when I tell you more about him. I've got some Captain America news, and I've also got some news about another man crush of mine.
Blimey, there's a lot of these going on.
I know. Well, I've been single for a while, so I don't know whether I'm starting to veer that way. If I am, then
so be it.
Once I get this bit of news out, then hopefully there'll be someone interested. First off, sir, you've heard of Silent Hill?
I have.
The computer game franchise that started on PlayStation 1.
One of my favourite all-time games on the PS1. So scary.
As
scary.
it is mine as well. Next to Resident Evil, I think it's probably the most...
Never liked Resident Evil.
Did you not?
Hated the change of camera angles. You sort of walk in one way and then you turn a corner and the angles change and you walk in another way.
Yeah, I mean, some people did complain about the camera angles.
Silent Hill loved it. Really scary.
Okay, so recently we had news of a new Silent Hill, an update. They put out I say recently, this is quite a number of months back now. It turns out now Hideo Kojima, who was the writer of the original Silent Hill and also of the hugely, vastly successful Metal Gear Solid franchise, has left Konami. The gaming world is all up in arms about this because obviously with his departure, it puts a certain amount of uncertainty over things like Metal Gear and the new Silent Hill game.
Okay.
More so for Silent Hill because we had this brilliant demo that came out a little while back, a number of months back, called PT, which was absolutely petrifying.
Okay.
It was so scary. If you were clever enough to be able to complete this little demo level that they put out, at the end of it you were treated to a trailer with the lovely Norman Reedus, who was going to be kind of your main protagonist in the new Silent Hills title. Mm-hmm. This is now dead. They have now cancelled it.
Oh, okay.
And it's absolutely heartbreaking because I was so excited about it. On top of that as well, Konami have decided to remove Hideo Kojima's name and any reference to him from all the box art for the forthcoming Metal Gear Solid game. Now,
sour grapes.
Yeah, very much so. Hideo Kojima is in no uncertain terms an absolute genius when it comes to writing video game scripts and coming up with these amazing, fantastical ideas. As to where Konami will go without him and where he will go without Konami, I don't know, but I did want to just unfortunately let our listeners know that there is no more Silent Hill.
So where's he gone? What's he doing?
This is the thing. The details behind his departure are all very sketchy. Whether or not it was an argument between him and the people who sit around the big table at Konami, I don't know. We will find out probably more in the future, but it's just a very, very sad thing that they teased us so brilliantly with this little demo for the Silent Hills game.
Sure.
And now it's gone. A shame.
Very sad.
But, you know, I'll start with the bad stuff at the top.
Yes.
Because it'll get better, sir. It'll get better.
So.
Oh, it will. It will, I promise you. Captain America Civil War has begun shooting in Atlanta.
Okay.
We've had some news about people who've joined the cast. Paul Rudd is going to be in Civil War, so we're going to get some Ant-Man action.
Excellent.
Whether or not it'll be Ant-Man or Giant Man
remains
to be seen, but obviously let's see how the Ant-Man film plays out to see what sort of character he's going to be in there. The Vision.
We do like Paul Rudd, though.
I love Paul Rudd. I very luckily met Paul Rudd once. He signed my copy of Anchorman for me, and he was lovely. A very, very nice man.
Didn't he sign it with the wrong quote, though?
Well, it's not his quote. He wrote "Stay classy" on it, which is obviously Ferrell's quote, isn't it? But I'll take that. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He was a really, really nice guy. He was covered in baby food, I think, for some reason. Don't know why. Maybe that's a fashion thing.
Hungry.
American thing, I think. He's on board. He's going to be in there with all the other heavy hitters in Civil War, alongside the Vision. So Paul Bettany's coming back. He will be in there. More interesting to me, though, is that General Thunderbolt Ross is going to be in there. It's going to be William Hurt. Now, William Hurt obviously played him in the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
But I think it wouldn't be unfair to say that the Incredible Hulk is not really considered part of this current canon, is it?
Yeah, it is.
Well, it is and it isn't.
It is.
Is it part of the... I don't think it was part of the Marvel kind of phase 1 of movies, though, was it? I think Iron Man started that off.
Yes. and after Iron Man was the Incredible Hulk.
Was it really? Well, I
Yes.
stand corrected. This is why I need you to.
Who appeared in the post-credit scene?
It was. You're right. It was Iron Man, wasn't
It was
it?
Tony Stark.
It was Tony Stark.
Came to visit Thunderbolt Ross.
Did you like William Hurt as General Thunderbolt Ross?
I thought he was perfectly acceptable. Yes, I had no problem with him.
Because I was pegging for Billy Zane, really, to come back again. Now, I always liked Sam Elliott. I know the terrible, terrible movie that it is, the Ang Lee Hulk, but I really liked Sam Elliott as Thunderbolt Ross.
That shat all over it that you could not go back and recast anybody from that film. They had to distance themselves from that pile of shit as much as possible.
Indeed they did. But the big news there is that they've started shooting, so excellent. And let's see what other characters get added over the coming weeks. I'm going to imagine it's going to be pretty chock-a-block.
Well, one person you haven't mentioned, obviously, was somebody whose picture you put up on our Facebook page.
I did, Bilbo.
Yes,
Bilbo Freeman.
He of the hairy feet.
He of the hairy feet. Now, that's uncertain as to who he's going to be playing. Now, I've heard rumours there's a possibility he might be playing Uncle Ben.
Okay.
Not the purveyor of
rice.
fine rice.
Yes.
No, obviously Spider-Man's, or Peter Parker if you likes,
Dead uncle.
dead uncle. That'd be interesting. Because obviously the actor that they're pegging for, I think currently for Spidey, is it Asa Butterworth?
Butterfield,
okay.
Yes.
Who is obviously very, very young. So it would make sense, obviously, for Uncle Ben to be that little bit younger. Let's see what happens. So it's all very exciting.
Interesting.
Finally, this week, sir, in the Monkey Farm, man crush news. Tom Hardy.
Oh, yes, of course.
Tom Hardy has been expressing a fair old bit of interest in playing the Punisher.
Frank Castle.
Yeah. I think he'd be great.
He would be awesome, wouldn't he? Let's be honest.
I think he'd be a great Punisher.
Let's be honest.
He's even actually stated himself that he thinks he couldn't play the role because he's too short. But you know what? Whenever I've seen the Punisher in print, or even seen Thomas Jane or Dolph Lundgren playing him, it's never really something that's come into my mind. Oh, he should be shorter, or he should be taller. He's just hard as nails, isn't he?
I think the Punisher is 6 foot, give or take a couple either way. But I'm sure Tom Hardy could pull it off with great aplomb.
I'm sure he could as well,
and would lend a certain amount of credibility to the character as well, which I think is, in a way, with sort of no disrespect to Thomas Jane, is probably what it's been.
I liked the Thomas Jane Punisher movie.
It was very good, but had that been an actor at the time with the same clout that Tom Hardy has now, it would have been a very different film.
Yeah, extraordinarily different story.
And without John Travolta chewing all the furniture.
Every single bit of furniture,
yes.
in every set, on every scene, yeah. It's interesting to me, obviously, because Tom Hardy was cast originally as Rick Flag in the Suicide Squad.
Yes.
And that role's now gone to, I believe, Joel Kinnaman, who's playing him. Who looks great. He does look great. Mm-hmm. Tom Hardy didn't leave that particular project under a dark cloud at all. It was just really down to scheduling and down to him pushing the forthcoming Mad Max movie. But one other thing he has just recently come out with in an interview and said is the fact that he's teasing an involvement in another DC property, which is currently kind of on the boil with Warner Brothers and DC. Mm-hmm. He describes it as being really, really cool, a Technicolor Pulp Fiction and a psychological fuckfest. There's rumours it could be something to do with Transmetropolitan.
Oh, okay.
Which is obviously Warren Ellis and Derek Robertson, I think I've got his name right.
Yes, you have. Spider Jerusalem.
All set in the 23rd century about like an investigative journalist.
Yeah.
It's something, again, that I do own, but I've never read. That was gifted to me by someone a long, long time ago. I've never
do that a
read
lot.
it.
How
People
is
buy
it
me
you can have
things.
so much stuff? I can remember you saying once, I'm a great comic fan. I just find it hard reading.
Yeah.
You get given all this great stuff that is finite storytelling, and yet you still... and it all sits on your bookshelf. You just don't read it. Why is that?
Because I'm a terrible person.
You are.
I'm a media whore. Tom Hardy, as I say, it looks like he's got this thing on the boil with DC and Warner Brothers. I can't wait to find out more, because obviously I do love Tom Hardy. Very much looking forward to his turn as Mad Max. Very much looking forward to seeing him playing both the Cray twins in Legend. Which the trailer's out there for that, guys. Watch that on YouTube. Looks fantastic. That, sir, is all she wrote this week for the Monkey Farm.
That's the Monkey Farm. Short but sweet.
Indeed.
Okay, now we shall move on to this week's Quick Hits.
Quick Hits.
And in this week's Quick Hits, we shall begin with me.
Why not?
Why not, eh? Why not?
Why not? You deserve it. You're worth it.
Thank you. A few episodes ago, we talked about the Daredevil TV series.
Indeed.
So, for my quick hit this week, I wanted to do a bit of a twofer, which
Please
is
do.
to pull out 2 absolutely classic Daredevil tales that I think everybody should read and everybody should own.
Sounds good to me.
So what I have is Daredevil, The Man Without Fear, by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr., and Daredevil Born Again by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. Born Again came out first. It is, I would say, probably, in terms of Daredevil Pantheon, one of the best, if not the best, stories ever told. It effectively deals with Daredevil having everything he holds dear stripped away from him and being reduced to virtually nothing, and as it suggests, him having to rise up again and be born again. As I say, written by Frank Miller, who had an earlier massive run on the story which brought the character back to huge popularity. This was him coming back to the character after a break of a few years, and he tells a story. It begins with Karen Page, obviously known from the TV show, and she's not been working for Nelson Murdoch for quite a while, went out to LA to try and become an actress and ended up developing a bad drug habit and working as a porn star in order to finance her drug habit. And in order to get a fix, she sells Daredevil's secret identity as Matt Murdock.
What a bitch.
Indeed. This eventually works its way up through the criminal chain till it gets to the Kingpin. And finally the Kingpin, who is Daredevil's greatest adversary, who, funny enough, was introduced originally as a Spider-Man villain, but really took on in the Daredevil title. He finds out this and decides that now he knows his greatest opponent's secret identity, he's going to take him down. So he starts off in a very subtle way. He leaks information about Murdoch so that the I think the IRS, it starts off with the IRS freezing Matt Murdoch's accounts. The bank or whatever foreclosed on the mortgage for his apartment, so he's threatening to lose his apartment. He's also framed by a cop who the Kingpin has in his back pocket that he saw him paying off a witness to provide false testimony. He also gets dumped by his girlfriend, whether related to all this stuff going on or not, and she actually ends up going out with Foggy, which causes a bit of tension in their relationship. Matt goes to trial in terms of his bribing a witness, and Foggy manages to get him off. And the Kingpin's pissed off about this, so he blows up Matt's apartment and literally destroys everything. And Matt realises that this is the Kingpin and goes to confront him and is effectively beaten near to death.
Well, it's fair to say that he doesn't see any of this coming. It's all quite out of...
And having been beaten close to death, he gets thrown unconscious into a yellow cab, which is then driven into the river to dispose of him. But Matt manages to come round and escape and ends up crawling half dead back to his father's gym where he used to box, where he is found by a character called Sister Maggie, who is a nun, and she nurses him back to health, and there's a big revelation that comes in, and it is just about his rebirth from this and his almost sort of redemption from all this stuff that's going on about it. And the whole story does have very Catholic overtones. It's sort of very heavily religious, a lot of religious imagery.
Yeah.
But obviously Miller and Mazzucchelli had done Batman Year One a few years earlier, which is sort of recognised as one of the great Batman tales. It was then coming back together again. And in terms of just storytelling, it is up there with the best superhero tales. It's absolutely fantastic. And the other one was Daredevil Man Without Fear, which again written by Frank Miller but with art by our pal John Romita Jr.
One of our bezies, one of our best mates.
And
now this one I do know because this one I have read.
Yes, now this basically retells Daredevil's origin.
Yeah.
So starting off from him being with his dad when he was a kid and having the accident and everything that goes through it, and therefore you see his relationship with Stick and Stick training him sort of meeting and getting to know Foggy. You also have the start of his relationship with Elektra and the impact she has on his life. The Kingpin gets introduced, very much in line with the TV show.
Very much the blueprint for the TV show.
Very much so. I mean, if the TV show was based on anything, it is this. I mean, even when he first goes out to fight crime, he's got the black pyjamas and the black mask on. And again, much like the TV show ends up, I think it's literally the last panel is him in the suit for the first time, the red suit.
It's quite a brave move, really, for a comic to do that, really.
Yes.
Because obviously it's a known character anyway, and to
Yes.
spend your entire publication with him not in the
not in it.
in the
But
suit.
this is it. It was retelling the story from the beginning. Beautiful art, fantastic writing, just really, really wonderful storytelling. Now,
Yes, it is one that always sits in the back of my mind as being very, very enjoyable to read.
yeah,
Very exciting.
absolutely. Now, that one, The Man Without Fear, that is for you. As I say, I have all these comics.
You're giving me an on-air gift.
I am. Well, it's simply because you said to me a few weeks ago, oh, I want to read The Man Without Fear again. I need to borrow that from you, and I've only got it in comics, and frankly, you aren't getting your hands on them.
Well, that is a lovely thing. Thank
So
you very much, sir.
I thought, yeah, so that's for you.
Oh, that's excellent.
Which leaves us with Daredevil Born Again, the trade paperback. So what I thought we would do is offer it as a prize to our listeners.
Are we doing a competition?
A competition.
Can I enter?
No, you can't.
Damn. That's
So-
a whole heap of awesome. What have they got to do to get their hands on this?
Well, what I thought was, we could ask a question about Daredevil, we could ask that sort of stuff, but really what we want is to give this not to somebody who just happens to know about Daredevil, but somebody who's a loyal listener and somebody who would know a little bit about us.
Okay.
So, the question is, and there's lots of terms and conditions about this, but frankly I can't be bothered going through those right now. If you email geekmindedfools, all one word, at gmail.com and simply tell us what Scott's quick hit was in episode 5. So all we want to know is whatever it was that was Scott's quick hit in episode 5, and frankly I don't know what it was right now. That was
I can't
completely
even think what it
off
was.
the top of my head. So I just want somebody who's listened to the episode or is prepared to listen to the episode again. So put as a subject Daredevil competition and just put what Scott's quick hit from episode 5 was, along with your name and address, and we will draw somebody at random and somebody will win a copy of the trade paperback Daredevil Born Again by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli, and trust me, you will absolutely love it.
I'm smiling ear to ear because that's very exciting. That's our first competition, I think.
Yes, indeed.
And what a great prize. It's an awesome prize.
thought it might
I mean,
be
I'm alright. I've got a copy of The Man Without Fear.
There
so
you go. So
I'm
you're
done.
happy.
I'm done. But yeah.
Okay.
Good. Very good. Very good. We like that a lot.
What's your quick hit?
This episode, sir, I'm also doing a service to our listeners. Okay? We have a relatively new listener, a friend of mine called Rupert.
Okay.
He is not a bear. He doesn't wear a scarf or red pants.
I hate to be a pedant, but Rupert wore a red jumper and yellow trousers.
Did he really?
Yellow with a black check on them. were his
Oh, you're right.
trousers.
You're right. Well, it's fortunate because Rupert isn't either of these things. He isn't a bear and he doesn't dress in that manner. But,
Excellent.
I had a lovely message from Rupert to say that he'd been listening to the podcast and he'd listened to a number of them in a row and he'd enjoyed them, and he gave me
Thank you, Rupert.
He gave me a wee suggestion of something that I might want to talk about for one of my quick hits.
Cool.
Now, funnily enough, he told me the name of this thing that I'm going to talk about, and I kind of said, "Oh yeah, no, I've seen it. I've already seen it. Thanks, it's great. It's really awesome. I've already seen it." I hadn't. I'd seen 3 other iterations of it.
Okay.
All right. Now you know
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, you know how much I love my kind of real crime kind of things. I like a bit of serial killery kind of thing, and I like the darker side of documentaries. This is a documentary, sir, called West of Memphis. Now it is quite a dark subject, but the documentary is so brilliantly put together. I would really, really wholly advise that you get out there and watch it. Came out in 2012. And I believe that as I'm speaking, Graham has just gone to his shelf, and yeah, that little click there you just heard was Graham plopping it down in front of me on DVD. So you have seen it.
I own West of Memphis. Oh, yes.
Now, this came off the back of 3 other documentaries, which were called Paradise Lost.
Yes.
Which there were 3 of. Now, these were the ones that I had seen.
Yeah.
So obviously, when Rupert had mentioned this to me, I was kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I think I'm pretty sure I've seen them. But it's on Netflix. So I flicked it on, started watching it. I'm like, no, I've seen all this. I hadn't seen it. What a fabulous documentary.
Peter Jackson,
Wingnut Films, obviously the sheer amount of people who got behind this particular subject, i.e. people like Eddie Vedder, from one of my favourite bands, Pearl Jam, one of the Dixie Chicks, who I know are one of your favourite bands, Henry Rollins, obviously
one of your man crushes.
Another one of my man crushes. But I digress a little bit because we haven't actually told you what this documentary is about.
No.
During the early 90s, I believe it was 1992, unfortunately, 3 very young children were found hogtied in a kind of a creek area, a river area, about half a mile from their home. Unfortunately, had been killed. Now,
and mutilated quite horribly.
And mutilated quite horribly indeed. Now, the law at the time there decided that they'd got their 3 guys for this particular crime. This documentary covers the time from when they are arrested up until when they are finally released, which spans around about 18 years that these poor 3 guys served inside. I was so blown away by this documentary. This is why I felt I really, this is not just a fan service to Rupert.
No.
This is something I genuinely did enjoy as a documentary, and I thought it opens up huge questions, doesn't it, regarding how the legal system works in America and how they could eventually enter what was called this Alford plea.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I can now cross this off my list of quick hits because this was one that I was going to be doing. No.
I'm incredibly sorry.
No. You don't have to be sorry. This is great. It is an amazing piece of filmmaking.
It is.
But about...
You can help me out with this one then.
Unbelievable true story. I mean, the police clearly just wanted to catch somebody for this.
As you would with a crime of this type.
Yes, but then rather than go through what you consider to be the usual procedure, they went straight for the most obvious stereotypical suspects. But when you actually scratched anywhere beneath the surface, you realised these guys had nothing to do with it and were very much patsies. They just fitted the profile. These guys were young goths. They were into devil worship,
into satanic cults.
Precisely,
they were described as being a cult.
Yeah, but all the stupid things that young people in a state like Memphis, where they're in the Bible Belt, and therefore they're just rebelling. They're just trying to find their own identity, and that means rebelling against everything around. And that unfortunately put a massive target on their back.
Yeah.
But as I say, scratch beneath the surface, and you realise that these guys, and bear in mind that one of these guys was mentally subnormal.
Jesse Miss Kelly was not of he was a little bit slower than the normal teenager.
Absolutely.
And I think they really played on that to so much of an extent that he pretty much admitted doing it.
No, he did.
He did admit doing it, didn't he? And
he was the one who was coerced into giving an admission that. How that ever stood up in a court of law, I don't know. And when you look at the actual court proceedings and what happened, and to describe this as a miscarriage of justice
would not do it justice.
Would not cover it.
No.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
I think it's very much a case as well of truth is stranger than fiction with this, because some of the other kind of peripheral characters, if you like, that come into this tale, such as the stepfather of one of them, not Terry Hobbs, the other one, the guy who had the knife that apparently had some blood from one of the children. When you first meet this guy in this documentary, you're kind of like, well, you don't look the full shilling, so my money's on you. And it's only when you get further into
Absolutely.
What's most inexplicable about it is the fact that Terry Hobbs, who was the father of was he a father or the stepfather of one of the other children? Another stepfather, was never interviewed at the time.
No.
But for my money, he's the guy that did it. They found DNA evidence of his hair inside one of the knots that was used to tie this child with one of these children up. I mean, all right, it's not a slam dunk, but come on. They've released these guys now after 18 years of months of campaigning on the behalf of, as I said earlier, people like Henry Rollins, Eddie Vedder, the Dixie Chicks. I believe Terry Hobbs actually tried to sue one of the Dixie Chicks for defamation of character, which I just thought was mind-blowing. This guy obviously did it. Please watch this for yourselves, though, and make your own mind up.
Now, the guy who I think most people consider to be the leader of the trio, which is Damien Eccles.
That's right, yeah.
He's actually written a book about the experience, but also you look at some of the writings that he did in his time in prison and also subsequently, and clearly just a hugely intelligent and articulate guy.
Yeah.
And, but even said that he was considering taking his own life at one point because of what they were going through. And to think that no one actually really listened and took any notice from what these guys were saying and really looked into what they were like. They were just kids that everybody thought were wrong-uns. And therefore, if anything bad like this has gone down, these guys are into devil worship, even though they were never into devil worship.
I mean, you touched on the fact of some of his writings. I mean, he co-wrote the lyrics to one of my favourite Pearl Jam songs, which I never knew until I'd seen this documentary.
Okay.
Brilliant, beautiful song called Army Reserve, which is from one of the later albums. One point of the documentary that stood out for me massively and genuinely did bring a little bit of a tear to my eye was Eddie Vedder recounting one of the letters that he'd received from Eccles, in which he'd said, I'm paraphrasing, but he says something along the lines of, I've forgotten what it's like just to walk, and I've forgotten what it's like to hear or to breathe because all I ever see is this prison and the people who are in it. And it's just, how can you rob someone of 18 years of their life? And they will have been given nothing, in the way of sorry. And to have to enter this Alford plea, which an Alford plea, for those of you who don't know, is when you plead guilty but you are still maintaining your innocence, I believe is kind of the definition of it. Makes no sense to me, but then again, a lot of the legal system doesn't make sense to me.
This is it. They've never actually, the authorities have never turned around and admitted that they got it wrong and said that these guys are innocent, so...
Which is a real shame. But, again, this is something we could probably spit out to a whole episode, but I'm not going to. Please go out and find West of Memphis. If you don't have Netflix, go and pick it up in a DVD store or whichever avenue you find it on. Watch it. It's a great watch. It really will be an eye-opener for you regarding the American legal system and quite how wrong it can go for some people.
I wouldn't imagine we have any squeamish listeners, but if anybody is, there is some quite graphic imagery of the crime in there, so
even to the point where I was questioning whether or not I was going to actually do this as a quick hit, purely for the fact that you being a father, I wasn't aware that you even had seen this, and as you say about people being squeamish, it is quite a tale,
absolutely.
But as a documentary, brilliantly put together, directed by Amy Berg, so please watch.
Good stuff. Okay, now we shall move on to this week's main topic.
When they got the ball, they won't drop it. The Geek-Minded fools discuss the main topic.
Right, this week we're going to talk about something that's of great interest to me. I love to read stories of films that never happened. Okay, now the terminology for this would be development hell.
Yes, indeed.
Over the years, there's probably been millions, if not billions of dollars poured into productions that we will not only never see, they are kind of frowned upon. For instance, things like Alfred Hitchcock's Kaleidoscope, which was just pushed out the door because he, at a very early time there in the 60s, wanted to do a film about a necrophiliac serial killer going around New York.
Whatever happened to that?
I think it became a film called Frenzy and also Psycho. The Jerry Lewis movie, The Day the Clown Died, which famously there's only one copy of in existence in a safe in Jerry Lewis's house. I don't know if you know what The Day the Clown Died is about, but it's basically set in wartime Germany. Jerry Lewis plays a clown, a Jewish clown, who is put into the concentration camps, and it is his job to lead all the children as the clown into the gas chambers. I can't think why he doesn't want it released.
Fuck me.
Yeah. There's only very, very handful of people who've seen this film, one of which is Harry Shearer, who often actually talks about that. Obviously, The Man Who Killed Don Quixote, Terry Gilliam's often talked about a film that never got made, and he's still trying to make. There's a brilliant documentary about it called Lost in La Mancha, which if you haven't seen, you should watch. That's great. Of course, Roger Corman's Fantastic Four would be a huge one of a film that actually was made, completed, and then just completely shelved because I think we've seen it, haven't we?
It was piss poor, yes.
It was absolutely piss poor. But yeah, that's just a brief rundown of some of the films that have been in development hell and will always stay in development hell. Now, very soon we are going to get a documentary coming out which is called The Death of Superman Lives. What happened? This is by a guy called John Schnepp, who was so enamoured by the story of the oft talked about but never actually made Superman Lives, the Tim Burton version of Superman.
So this is the one written by Kevin Smith.
That's correct, it is, yes. Written by Kevin Smith, or a treatment at least was written by Kevin Smith, to be directed around about 1996.
This was Nicolas Cage.
It was Nick Cage as Superman,
yeah.
But
I remember seeing a mock-up of him in the suit.
Yeah, we would have had... And those images didn't come till, about 2009 those images surfaced. So, we were talking a good 15 years after the fact. You would have had Brainiac, Lex Luthor and Doomsday as your villains, not to mention a big-ass spider, as we often hear talked about in Kevin Smith's renditions of his Superman Lives tales. This is coming out very shortly, this documentary, so I just thought it would be interesting for us to talk today a little bit about some other films that were kind of put into production but maybe never completed.
Okay.
So first off, I'm going to go with Dune.
Okay, Frank Herbert's.
Frank Herbert's June. Now, you're sitting there and you're thinking, but June did get made, didn't it?
They made it.
They did
God,
make
I wish
it.
they hadn't, but they did.
So do I. Now, I know we keep talking about our very dear friend Mark, but because he is our very dear friend, and as you've mentioned before, the third kind of unheard geek-minded fool.
The silent partner.
The silent fool, we'll call him. Now, he loves David
loves
Lynch's
June.
June. I can't abide it. I think it's absolute trash, but that's just me. Now,
I just found it really boring.
it is a very, very dull film. Now, during the 1970s, there's a relatively, well, I say relatively, he's a very famous director called Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Him, yes.
Who directed a couple of kind of arty films called El Topo and The Holy Mountain, which were kind of championed by John Lennon at the time. John Lennon kind of said, yeah, no, these are great movies, and they got a bigger audience just through his word of mouth. Now, all throughout the 70s, Alejandro Jodorowsky was trying to get his version of June made, and I can see on your face, Graham, how impressed you are with my pronunciation of Alejandro Jodorowsky's name.
Yes.
He had a real, like, a dream team assembled for this production of Frank Herbert's June. You would have had H.R. Giger would have done all the kind of previs work for the look of the film. Dan O'Bannon, again from Alien, was in there as special effects artist and helping with script treatments and such like. Salvador Dali was going to be in it. Orson Welles, Gloria Swanson, David Carradine, Mick Jagger. I imagine Mick Jagger would have been the Sting character. I don't know. I don't know who they would have played. Soundtracked by Pink Floyd, who would have been at the top of their game at the time. You know, this would have been amazing. This would have been an amazing film, I think. Now, there is a documentary on this as well, which is called Alejandro Jodorowsky's June, which you should give a watch because it's a very, very interesting watch. It's nice to see all these people who you will recognise from other films and other franchises all kind of pretty much started here. But unfortunately, the finances pulled the plug on it, and it never got made. My question about this particular one, though, is if this had have been made, this would have come out before Star Wars. Would this have changed the landscape of sci-fi? Because he's a pretty visionary director. If you've never seen El Topo, give it a watch because it is pretty mind-blowing. And I wonder if, had this have come out, had it have been released, would it have changed the way films went? We'll never know, Graham, because it's in development hell.
We won't, no.
You'll never know, I'll never know.
No.
But that's the beauty of development hell. Next up, Akira. Now, Akira, obviously, again, you're going to say, but Akira got made. It was an animated, it was a manga film. It was, but for many, many years, they wanted to do a live-action version of it. Obviously set in a dystopian future of Neo-Tokyo. Tetsuo and Kaneda, two friends who come together in order, well, more so Kaneda comes together in order to try and save the planet, the world, if you like, from this impending psychic explosion that is Akira. This had some really big names attached to it as well. Warner Brothers signed the rights to it in 2002, and it's been attempted over 6 times since 2002 to get it made. It's been shut down every time. Most recently, Leonardo DiCaprio was attached as a producer, but unfortunately, again, creative differences between everyone involved just ended up having this completely shut down. Such names as Joseph Gordon-Levitt, James Franco, Fassbender, Timberlake, Phoenix, they've all been involved, or mooted to be involved at some stage or another. But again, another one that they've just gone, no, it's never going to get made.
I hated Akira.
Did you not like Akira?
Absolutely hated it.
You're not really a great fan of manga, though, are you? Or are you? I don't know, actually.
Do you know what? I mean, there was a lot of manga. There was a time, probably in the mid-90s, that I was friends with somebody who's very into manga, and he would lend me a lot of stuff, and I remember stuff like Vampire Hunter D I absolutely loved. Tank Police.
Yeah, that's the period of manga that I enjoyed.
Yes,
like Vampire Hunter D and Riding Bean and things like that.
But Akira, I just thought it was dreadful. Never liked it.
It looks beautiful.
It
does look beautiful. It's a stunning looking film. But it looks like we'll never see a live action version of it, which is probably no bad thing.
Good.
No bad thing. Now we're getting a bit more to the meat and potatoes.
Okay.
So this is where I think I'm going to hook you. I'm going to get your interest now, alright?
Go on in.
Who's your favourite comic book character, Gray?
Spider-Man.
Of course he is. Now, we've had some fabulous Spider-Man films.
We have?
We've had some shit ones as well.
Yes.
Yeah, we won't talk about those.
No.
We said everything we needed to say about those
before.
Obviously, during the early 90s, I think this was about the sort of time that people were picking up the comic book franchises and starting to run with them film-wise. So, inevitably, someone was going to try and run with a feature-length Spider-Man piece.
And who did? Was it James Cameron?
Well done, sir. He delivered a 47-page script treatment, which you can find online. I don't know if you've ever read it.
I have.
then this is going to be a great conversation. During this 47-page script treatment, we will find Electro, or Colton Strand, as he's referred to in this script. Not the Max Dillon that we know.
No.
Also, Sandman pops up as someone inexplicably just called Boyd. Not Flint Marko, as we well know and love him. It was more a kind of a tale of like capitalist corruption, and I believe Carlton Strand was this awful... I suppose they were trying to go for a Kingpin-esque character, but shoehorn Electro on top of him. The script just reads so badly, but it's most notable for having its finale set atop of the World Trade Center, with Spidey revealing his identity to Mary Jane. I say most notable. It's probably more notable for being absolutely fucking chock full of profanity. Spider-Man calling Electro a motherfucker. Okay? And also, a big long scene of Spider-Man and MJ shagging.
Yeah.
What the fuck was he thinking? James Cameron, honestly, what were you thinking? Apparently when they wrote up the contract for this, they were so assured that James Cameron was going to just knock this out of the park. All they did was they got the Terminator 2 contract and they just blanked that and just replaced all the details with Spider-Man instead of Terminator 2. I mean, thank God that this never really came to fruition, because it just sounds god-awful, doesn't it? It sounds like absolute trash.
Yeah.
Would you have gone to see it though?
Probably, yes. Yeah, because it was a Spider-Man film, and I think, at that point you were clamouring for anything.
I wonder if it would have been, what sort of rating it would have got, whether it would have been a 15 or an 18, knowing that it had all this profanity and sex in it.
Definitely one of those, yeah.
That would surely have killed any sort of interest in a Spider-Man movie, wouldn't it, making it an adult rating?
Yeah.
So this one really needs to stay in development hell, doesn't it?
Well, it obviously did, and thank God for that.
Thank God for that, indeed.
Thank you, Sam Raimi.
Thank you, Sam Raimi. Right, this is the one that I want to talk to you about, and I've wanted to talk to you about since the very beginning of this show.
Go on.
We, again, have had many, many iterations of I think, both of our favourite characters. I know very much for me, over the years, as I've got older, I've more veered towards this character and away from Spider-Man. I don't know why, I just did. Batman. Mm-hmm. We've had some great films, we've had some bad films. Mm-hmm. Most notably, bad film-wise, we had Batman and Robin, didn't we?
We did.
Which was quite clearly the biggest pile of shit that could ever have been put on celluloid.
Mm-hmm.
Bat nipples, bat credit cards, you name it, it's in it, and it's crap.
Yeah.
Obviously, on the back of that, they felt they needed to go a little bit more serious, or at least change the tone from just outright silly, which is exactly what Batman and Robin was. So they chose to go to, the go-to guy for serious, I suppose, at the time, which was Darren Aronofsky.
Oh, yes.
Who's done such works now as Black Swan.
The Wrestler.
The Wrestler, which I think is a fabulous film. Mm-hmm. Very depressing, but a fabulous film. He was pretty much, well, I say he was. The script's out there. Again, you can read this online. The script was written. It was written by himself and Frank Miller. I imagine what those meetings must have been like between Darren Aronofsky and Frank Miller.
Just a laugh a minute, I can imagine.
I'm envisioning a dark, grey room with many, many coffee cups with cigarettes put out in them, and just the smell of death in the air, really. But yeah, he was putting together Batman Year One. Now, Aronofsky at the time had been attached to things like Watchmen. He was going to do the first of the Wolverine movie. Mm-hmm. He was attached to... even back then, he was attached to a remake of RoboCop, the reboot, if you like, of RoboCop. These never came off the ground, much like Batman Year One, but does sound quite interesting to me, although ridiculous, and I have read the script.
I haven't read the script. How far was the script from the story of Batman Year One?
Pretty far.
Right, okay.
Pretty far. In this, you have Big Al and Little Al, who run the auto repair centre. They kind of take the place of Alfred. Bruce is found in an alleyway by Big Al and taken back to the auto repair centre, and he's looked after from there on. And he's found in an alleyway crying over his dead parents, so inexplicably he's taken back to this auto repair centre and kind of looked after. The rest of the script comes off as equal parts taxi driver and big, because he's almost played like a bit of an idiot throughout it. It's almost like he's like a childlike character in it. The pitch from Aronofsky when he went to the studio heads was, I'm going to do Death Wish or The French Connection meets Batman, which couldn't be any further from Batman, could it? Batman not being a killer and all.
Yeah, but I just think, I'm wondering why they're going for such a brutal hard edge, particularly with the Cameron Spider-Man as well. It's like, these are superheroes, these are comic book characters, and therefore surely your target audience is, if not children, then at least a family setting. And yes, there have been some Spider-Man and Batman tales that have been a little more adult than others. But from a cinematic perspective, I don't know why you would focus on...
It actually almost comes off cheap, doesn't it? If you know what I mean. If it just feels cheap.
It just comes off as shit.
Yeah. Gordon was going to be more of a Serpico-like character. It's like he's like when you read the script, he's kind of like a chain-smoking Serpico. It's just so laughable. If Gordon was Serpico, then Aronofsky described his take on Batman as being like Travis Bickle.
I'm surprised Frank Miller was involved in this, because this sounds like somebody who doesn't have a handle on the character at all, which Frank Miller clearly did and does. So
throughout the script, when you read it, it does come off a little bit like Kick-Ass.
Right.
Throughout the script, you never really get to see him in the suit. He doesn't obviously know that he's Bruce Wayne because he's been adopted by Little Al and Big Al.
So what the fuck do they do? Like wipe his memory or something?
No, he's found in this alleyway, crying over his dead parents, and they decide to just spirit him away.
Yeah, but he would still know he was Bruce Wayne.
You read the script; it's inexplicable. Okay.
I mean, how old was he when this happened?
He very, very young. He's talking like 4 or 5.
When
he finds out that he's a Wayne by the fact that he's. And again, this is kind of shoehorned into the script. He finds this ring, or I believe he's given this ring by Big Al, which has got a W on it. So for Wayne, and there's one point during the script. Where he's wearing this ring and he punches someone, and it leaves a mark on the guy's face, which not only looks like a W, it looks like a bat. I love the fact that you're just crumbling in front of me. But you know what the best thing about this is? It never got made and it never will. All right.
Fuck me.
So I'm taking from this, you're a wholehearted supporter of development hell. It's a film that just really never needed to get made, and,
or written, or thought about, or considered in any way.
A majority of the script is him kind of watching all these lowlifes and the hookers and the pimps in the city, and just becoming more and more angry. You know, there's a Selena Kyle pops up in it, and she is a full-on prostitute, and a really, really sassy, dirty prostitute. It culminates in a big fight in a warehouse where Bruce, dressed in kind of, again, I'm going to say Kick-Ass style clothing and like makeshift crash helmet, crashes through the doors of this warehouse on a motorbike and beats everyone up, and that's pretty much the end. Has this whet your appetite for us to make our own film, maybe?
What's the next one?
That's it. That's all you got from Development Hell. That's all you've got. And I think, judging by the look on your face, I think if we spoke about any more films from Development Hell, you may well just go out on some sort of murderous killing spree.
I just fail to see how. I know that hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah.
But at what point would anybody think that a story in which Bruce Wayne, not knowing he's Bruce Wayne, is brought up by 2 motor mechanics called Big Al and Little Al?
Little Al amusingly.
Float.
Little Al very tall. See what they did there? It's clever. It's clever, and he's a bit touched. I do like the terminology touched. Oh, he's a bit touched. The things that you can't say anymore, that you shouldn't say anymore. He's touched. But yeah, I mean, is there any particular films that you've ever read about in the past that might have had this sort of treatment that you thought, oh, I wish that had gotten made?
No.
No, they can all stay in development hell. Fuck them. No, they're all wank.
Do you know what the funny thing was? You say to me development hell. There's only one film that springs to mind with the phrase development hell. And it got made. And that is Alien 3.
Yeah.
And the fact that, this got made... Who was it? Fincher?
David Fincher,
Alien 3, and yet there was a French guy who was on board before that.
Whose name escapes me.
And it was so long in the making, and they had so many different versions of it, and it was just getting kicked around. And I can remember buying a magazine back in the early 90s just saying Alien 3 still in development hell, and just this long... It was like a huge article about everything that had changed and everything that had been rewritten and everything that, all the studio's involvement and that sort of thing. And therefore, you say to me development hell, and that's what always springs to mind. But
there's a huge amount of movies that obviously sit under this umbrella of development hell, and some of them genuinely do sound good. But for the case of our podcast this week, I thought it'd be more interesting to pick the ones that sounded really shit,
utterly crap.
Because I not only wanted to see your reaction to them, I just think it's sometimes more interesting to talk about things that deserve to be in development.
Deserve to die.
I mean, I'll give just a little bit of an honourable mention to a couple of films such as Confederacy of Dunces, which by all accounts is supposed to be one of the funniest stories ever, which has been sitting in development hell for about 15, 20 years and gone through so many different cast iterations. But again, that looks like it will never get made because I think people just lose interest in things, don't they, after a while.
And times change, you know.
Times do change.
Something that seems like a great idea 20 years ago, now you just laugh it off. So.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine during the early 70s, they were probably speaking about maybe Batman films and Superman films. Then, you know, just as I think we got the first Superman film was what, 78?
It was 78, yes.
And then Batman, obviously, we had the 1966 Batman. But I imagine, you know, at the time they were still trying to think. So that, you know, there may still be stories out there that we never know that just got buried, just, you know, talked about in bars or coffee shops by these guys.
A few films that I've sat and watched do spring to mind that I wish had stayed in development hell.
Would you like to give me an example of one?
Sorry, Mark, Only God Forgives.
Yeah.
Which I have to say, the worst films I've ever seen. The top of that list always used to be Bonfire of the Vanities, but
not one bonfire in it.
But having watched Only God Forgives, that went straight to the top of my list. I think it's an appalling film with no redeeming features, and yes,
much like another film which I read about recently called The Guest, which I think you've seen. Maybe we could do an episode on The Guest.
I have seen. That will be one of my quick hits.
So that should be one that should have stayed in development hell.
Oh,
it shouldn't have even been allowed through any sort of doors of development.
That should have just had a bullet in its head and be buried in the middle of a desert somewhere.
There's something deep down inside of me, in the pit of my stomach, that says, my God, what would the world have been like if Nick Cage had been Superman? And I don't think it would have been a better place.
No, definitely not.
He definitely put the bunny back in the box, as it were. Oh my God, the bees! The bees! So there you go, sir. You know,
bizarre. It's a bizarre world.
Bizarre tales of development hell, and you know, these are stories that are never going to go away, and they're always going to be added to. There's always going to be films that never get made. There's always going to be the elevator pitches, if you like. Of, you know, I've got this great idea to do that. Okay, here's $1 billion. Oh no, we've funneled all the money out, and it's all gone horribly wrong. It's always going to happen. I just find it very, very interesting of what could have been, and obviously what should never have been.
Absolutely. Cool. Thank you for that, Scott.
You're very welcome.
Well, I guess that's all for this episode. So, for myself, Graham.
And myself, Scott.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. Hi guys, we just wanted to chip a little extra bit on the end of this episode regarding the competition. I think... Is this our first Easter egg? Our first...
This would be our first Easter egg, yes.
Our
indeed.
first
this is
bonus track, hidden track.
Our first hidden moment.
Yes, indeed.
Although I think we've both had many hidden moments. I have them on a daily basis.
Yes, you do. You do. Yes, in our usual Geek-Minded Fools way, we did kind of hurry through and throw out the competition. So we just wanted to clarify that the question you need to answer is, what was Scott's quick hit in episode 5? The email address to send your entries to is geekmindedfools@gmail.com. Please put Daredevil competition in the subject line and obviously include your name and address. We will print out all the correct entries and draw one out of the hat. The winner will be advised by email, and also their name will be put up on the Facebook page to declare them as the winner. The closing date for the competition will be Sunday the 7th of June, so you have until then to get your entries in. However, multiple entries will mean that the person sending them will have all of their entries disqualified, so please don't just keep pinging in 20 emails and hope that gives you a better chance of winning. You will be disqualified. That's pretty much it, so good luck everyone.
Best of luck, chaps.